And we are live here with Austin Peterson. Love me some Austin. Libertarian presidential candidate of 2016, also congressional candidate up in the great state of Missouri. And he is joining us here today. Austin is the one person that kind of turned me on to what libertarianism is. And it's good to have you back on the show, man. Thanks for taking time. You do a radio show out of Missouri now. So thank you for taking time to come on the show. Good to see you again, John. How you been? Brother, just grinding. Things are good. You've had a lot happening with you. You're engaged. So give me a little background of what's been going on. I think it's been like a few months since we've actually spoken. So what's been going on with you? Yeah, so, a lot of me time, right? Focused on, putting together everything that's necessary for a wedding, right? I'm getting married next month. Oh, wow. Bachelor party is this Saturday night. Heading out with my boys to go have some fun. And, just doing a whole lot of exercise. I kind of had slacked on my personal fitness goals while I was doing all the campaign stuff. So I've, when COVID started, it was like, you couldn't do the in-person thing anymore, right? So me and my fiance was kind of like, oh, well, maybe you should teach me some of this stuff. And so you got her into karate too. Yeah. So she ended up loving it. And we started formalizing it. And, now that there's all these options online, we've been taking classes from real senseis in Japan, and you just do, that's it's hooked up from what I'm talking to you right now. So it's you can get training from, some of the best teachers in the world, in your living room. So we've been doing a lot of that, and, just trying to get not just physically healthy, but mentally healthy, because I just turned 40 this year. So I still see a lot of battles for freedom that are ahead of me, but I feel like I'll be better equipped to handle that, with a wife, kids, a stable family life, and, a more solid foundation than bachelors running for president of the United States. It doesn't work well. Do you think that had an impact on your runs? That the fact that you weren't married, you didn't have kids, you think that had an impact? Yo, it's huge, John. Really? It was always the women that would ask, right? So the guys don't really, they don't really think about it. They're not like, oh, hey, where's your wife? But anytime you go to a campaign event, especially when I ran as a Republican, the women were like, well, where's his wife? And if you don't have a wife, they're like, well, is there something wrong with him, or is there something, So yeah, that's part of it. But I mean, I'm not doing it just for that reason, but right. Mostly just because it's, I've met the love of my life, and because she's treated me better than anyone, I've ever met. She worked with you. She was a huge supporter of yours during your presidential run. Because I remember her, I think I talked to her once or twice about when I got you on the show previously. And so yeah, y'all must have known each other for quite some time. Yeah, for sure. So it was kind of funny. We were friends, for a few years. And sometimes, us guys can be dumb and not see a good thing that's right in front of us. So she felt that way about you from the get-go, and you just didn't see it? Yeah, she was kind of she was my number one fan, and I didn't think about her like that because, I think I had another relationship I was in at the time. So I just, and so she was in a relationship too. And then kind of the stars aligned, and we were both single at the same time. And I think I kind of kicked myself, and I said, this person loves you so much. what would you do if you lost this person? Like, what would you do if this person was no longer in your life for whatever reason? You know what I mean? Because like, you know what it's like, John. You have fans; they can come and go. You know, some people are with you for years. Other people, it's like they come in and they go out. And I thought to myself, man, I couldn't. If I lost Stephanie, I would be destroyed. So I was like, I better get this girl locked down and put a ring on it and
put a baby inside of her. Yeah, absolutely.
Make an honest woman out of her.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. Good for you, man. And then how was the radio show going? Because that was a recent thing. After your last congressional run, it almost seemed like immediately after they came up to you and said, hey, we want to give you a radio show. Or is that how it happened?
Yeah, it was. You know, so when you campaign for office, you do a lot of media. One of those agencies here in Missouri, you know, heard my interviews and really liked me. I think like the highest vote total I got was in mid-Missouri because they're just, you know, very libertarian here in mid-Missouri to a large extent. And you know, I didn't win the primary, but you kind of make a name for yourself, and like the radio crew was like, hey, would you like to fill in? So I filled in a couple of times, and they were like, hey, you know, you should do this full time. And it kind of clicked because it's like, doing what you're doing right now, you know, like kind of what we're doing right now. This is professionally, it's the all-American dream job. You know what I mean? Like, it's like when you watch movies about truckers who call into radio stations, they're always like, I wish I was a radio star rather than like a trucker, you know, but it's kind of like, it's fun. It's exciting. It's rewarding. It's like, it's one of those industries where it's very boutique, right? Conservative talk radio. It's like, it's big, but there's only like very few people in it. So it's fun. And like, you know, I can get into trouble, but not be like, people want to send, you know, SEAL Team 6 to kill me or the Taliban hunting me down. You know what I mean? It's
so I assume you're covering politics on this show?
Yeah, so we do a lot of like local and state-based coverage. So a lot of it happens with what's happening in Missouri, but you know, I tie it into national stuff, and so it's kind of like local news radio. People listen in terrestrially, but people, you know, they watch the Facebook live stream and all that stuff. So there's a lot of people from all over the country that will tune in, and it's just a morning show. It's a morning wake-up show, morning drive. You know, get people, you know, with their kids off to work, inform them what's happening during the day. And, you know, I try not to force feed my ideology on people as much as just try and introduce them to new ways of thinking and then let them decide for themselves. I have my own strong opinions, but I try and be really inclusive to like other worldviews, just because I know I don't represent the kind of typical person who lives around here, and so that puts me in a minority position, even though I'm like speaking for the majority to an extent. So I try and like take that responsibility seriously, knowing that I have to serve an audience where, you know, maybe I'll be at odds with them on, you know, Donald Trump or whatever, you know.
So speaking of that, speaking of what's going on in the world today, specifically the country, where do you stand politically now? Because I've been watching you on your Instagram. You got some fire ass memes over there, which are incredible. I love the trolling that you do, and a lot of people don't pick up on your sarcasm. But where do you stand these days politically? Have you shifted at all, or are you still devout libertarian?
So like philosophically, I'm a devout libertarian, but it's kind of like, in inches, I move myself closer towards anarchy every day.
Did not expect to get that answer.
I can't go full-blown anarchist just because, like, you know, I know too many anarchists and have met too many anarchists, and I'm like, that's not me. You know, like, I have a profound love for my country and a profound love for American history. And if anything has changed about me, it's probably that I've lowered my standards, and actually, you know what? And this is a controversial take, but I'm kind of proud of that to an extent. I think it actually takes courage just to lower your standards and raise your percentages, like to accept that you won't get everything you want immediately overnight, and compromises can often lead to really good outcomes. There, you still there?
Yeah, gotcha. Everything's good.
Okay, hold on. The computer that I use to do this live stream is attached to the wall, and it just came unattached from the wall.
Oh Jesus!
So thankfully, we still have a connection. So
that's good. Right. So you were pushing for Joe Jorgensen during the 2020. Oh, you did? Because I remember you did an opening speech for her.
Oh, so you missed out on
I did. Yeah, that's what I
yeah,
wondered. Because
you
I
missed
remember
out on
I
stuff
started
like
seeing
that.
that you were doing more Republican-based stuff. I was like, okay, what the hell happened here? So
They
elaborate for me what
invited me,
happened there.
I still have lots of good friends in the Libertarian Party, and I worked for them with activism for so many years. It's kind of like you kind of leave a part of yourself, even though you leave the party. Like you have supporters and followers that joined the party for me, right? So I
Yeah.
still have friends there, and they had great respect for me, and they wanted me to come up and say nice things about George Jorgensen, which I did, and I think that she's a wonderful person. There's nothing wrong with her,
Mm-hmm.
but I voted for and advocated to vote for Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. And you draw a lot
And
of criticism for that because a lot of libertarians felt like you sold them out.
yeah, they feel like I sold them out, but I mean, like, I never bought them in.
Yeah.
There's kind of like, say you sold them out is kind of like to imply that I had some obligation
True.
towards the Libertarian Party, which I had already left the party. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any obligation to them whatsoever.
Okay.
But like I'm more than happy to speak to libertarian groups and to tell them, how I feel about things, and to say, I'm not afraid to tell them what I think is true, even if I think it hurts their feelings. Sometimes libertarians can be as triggered as leftists, or a lot of Republicans are
I think,
triggered
yeah.
about
Yeah.
apple flavored horse paste this week, and you know and Democrats are triggered about something, January 6th. So it's
Yeah.
like every political group has their kind of gree, and I'm a contrarian's contrarian. So amongst the contrarians, I am a contrarian, and that triggers people because I'm willing to even look at libertarian views objectively and to
Mm-hmm.
say where they might fall short in certain situations where you have to use logic rather than dogma, because more than anything I reject dogma as like I do karate,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's a whole system, and the masters of karate say this is how you do karate, and each school has their own way of doing it, and they all say that they're the right way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, what are you doing? You're punching someone in the face, right?
Yeah.
So like there's lots of different ways to do the same thing. And so, but I don't buy the dogma from each master that says you have to do it my way or you're wrong.
Right.
I'm the type of person who's kind of like, okay, I like to cherry pick,
Mm-hmm.
take the best of each view, right? Just like with martial arts, take the best of jujitsu, the best of karate, the best of judo, taekwondo, whatever, and then apply it, right? And I do that with my worldview,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm broadly libertarian, but if you try and sell drugs to kids, I will end your life with a nuclear weapon if I have to, right? So it's, that makes you controversial.
Where do you see the Libertarian Party going now? Because it seems like libertarians, or it seems like the GOP is starting to mirror a lot of libertarian ideas in regards to their gatekeeping really hard. Like, you're not a real libertarian, you're not a real Republican, you're not this, that. And to me, it seems, well, it's a two-part question. The first one being, where do you see the Libertarian Party going? And the second one is, are you seeing millennial GOP members leaning more libertarian in principle these days?
No. Well, millennials, I feel like we're already pretty libertarian. A lot of the millennials were pretty like Ron Paul friendly, people my age and a little bit younger. But as you start to go towards the Zoomer demographic, as you get towards younger people, I've actually found them to be much more authoritarian than libertarian, right? So and a lot of that has to do with the debate in the Republican Party right now between populism and libertarianism, where it's kind of like there are some libertarian ideas that populists like Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis or J.D. Vance or others, these people are advancing these populist ideas. Some of them are very libertarian, and I agree with, and some of them are very authoritarian, and I think they have to be resisted. Mm-hmm. So the important debate right now is happening in the Republican Party. There's another fight that's happening in the Libertarian Party right now that they would not like me saying this, but I think is rather inconsequential to the immediate threat to our freedoms that's happening right now in regards to our view of executive power as it relates to the pandemic. Right? What is the proper role for the government in regards to the pandemic, both from the not just president of the United States, but the governors? And I'll tell you what, John, this will, again, I'm going to lose every libertarian follower I ever had, but the pandemic put to the lie, it made the libertarian lie. I realize the big libertarian lie is that the two parties are the same. I believe that. I parroted it. I found plenty of evidence to confirm my biases. But when the pandemic happened, if you believed in freedom, you wanted to live in a red state, right? You didn't want to live in New York City during the pandemic. Yeah. There's a reason people moved out of the cities and, more towards the suburbs, and from the suburbs to the farms, to the rural life, that the housing market exploded because people realized that, living in these cities, you didn't have control over, whether if you own your business, they could come in and shut you down immediately, right? Yeah. For, not following whatever arbitrary health code there was. So it's a lie that the two parties are the same. Not all the governors did a perfect response. A lot of Republican governors did some stupid crap. But overall, states like South Dakota with Kristi Noem, Florida with Ron DeSantis, my state, Missouri with Mike Parson, overall did really well. Your state of Texas did not do so well.
No, not towards the end, not towards now when Abbott's seeking re-election. Now he's starting to get a fire lit under his ass, which is very disconcerting because it's like, is that the only time you're actually going to stand up for freedom and liberty is when it comes re-election season, which is, it's so annoying to see. Because I know Greg Abbott, he enforced the lockdowns, and then now he comes out and says, yeah, we're not going to enforce the mask mandates again. It's like, you already compromised on that once. Like when the metal met the meat, you backed down. Like you bent the knee to this populist opinion, and then you got people like Kristi Noem who's just kicking ass up there, and like she's got, and I've said it before, it's like she's got bigger balls than Abbott does, and she drew a lot of fire. But you look at her state; they're doing wonderfully well, and people, it just seems necessary. Like. Yeah, and people just seem to be, and you're right, the whole authoritarian thing, and we're seeing a lot of, I think a lot of Zoomers embrace this idea because they don't really understand the principles of what the Constitution represents and what freedom actually means. There's spoon-fed propaganda from MSM that says, hey, if you don't support this, then you don't care about other people's lives. It's almost like the social contract that they think that we have with fellow Americans. And it's been very disconcerting to watch that so many people are willing to say, yeah, screw my liberty, I'll cash it all in for possible safety at the hands of the government that, by the way, is not doing a very good job.
Yeah, I mean, all good points here, John. And, when you talk about the Zoomers, I mean, remember when we were talking about the alt-right for a little while and that was a big deal, but now for some reason nobody really talks about it anymore? Well, I mean, some of those people got deplatformed, right? Pushed away, canceled. People like, Milo Yiannopoulos, even though he said he wasn't alt-right, he kind of was, right? But there were a lot of those people that professionalized themselves and have taken up roles in either not in academia, but in magazines and are candidates right now. And some of these people, I mean, they call themselves. There's a word for it. It's like there used to be a word for conservatives. George W. Bush and people would call themselves compassionate conservatives. Economic nationalists. Economic nationalists, which sounds really like. Great. Okay, great. Like that sounds like America first, right? And I'm an America first kind of a guy. But what economic nationalism amounts to is, and what they're calling it is this common good capitalism, right? A lot of these quote unquote, I won't call them conservatives, and many of them won't even call themselves conservatives. I'll say they're populists or just nationalists, right? To them, freedom and free markets and liberty is antithetical to a well-ordered society. So because, and to a degree, they're right, because freedom comes with chaos, right? It comes with not knowing. It comes with it comes with multitudes of choices. It comes with the ability for people to make the wrong choices, to screw up their life with drugs, to ride a motorcycle without a helmet, right? To ride in a truck without a seatbelt or something like that. And economic nationalists place the good of the nation state above the liberty of the individual. And they see capitalism as something that needs to be reined in, and free markets as something that need to be controlled because, either they have a religious conservative belief that's anti-capitalist, of which is probably the most pretty close to the polar opposite of what I would.
That's where I wanted to pick your brain on. And this is something that I've been noting primarily on social media. And social media is kind of like the pulse of where our society is at. To an extent, you'll see like a large percentile of people agreeing or disagreeing with certain current events or issues. But the one thing that I'm noticing more and more, though, is the GOP, it seems as if they're trying to push back to this idea of church and state being the same and legislating theological beliefs. It seems like, say, for example, Turning Point, who I don't really agree with a lot of what Turning Point does. I think they're Trump loyalists. But when you have people that are, say, for example, that you say, I'm talking to Brandy Love, the porn star, and trying to get her on the show, that people are saying like, oh, well, you're a porn star, you're not a real conservative because you don't accept, Christian beliefs and stuff like that. Where do you stand? Where do you see that being as far as conservatism rooted in Christianity? Like, do you see this making a comeback, or do you see this as a good or a bad thing?
It depends. I know plenty of Christian libertarians, but I know that like typically a belief in an organized religion leads one to a sort of imperious worldview, because when you claim to know all the answers and you claim to be acting in the name of God, then it's really difficult to argue with someone who can claim a higher authority and a higher power. And when it doesn't require validation from the second party, I don't consent to their view of the universe, and so therefore I can't consent to their worldview based on their religion. So when it comes to politics, it's at that point in time when I kind of like, swords and spears at the gate, defend the Constitution from those who claim that their higher moral authority should impede on the rights of citizens to not go to church, or not to be required to tithe, for example, right? Because socialist Christianity is a thing, and there's social conservatives in the church who do not agree with the progressive Christians in the church. So you have this fight going on within the church right now, where you have like a lot of young people are trying to return to traditional values. So they're flocking back to the Catholic Church, and they're embracing traditional Catholicism.
I have seen that. There has been a big push on a lot of these pages of saying embracing.
Have you noticed, like, this was kind of a joke that some people were making, like Ben Shapiro and others were making a joke, and I didn't want to pick a fight with some of these big like figureheads because they got way more followers than I do. But
fuck it. That's when you do it. That's when you go full. You go for it, bro.
Yeah.
We need that.
I'm more judicious. I pick my battles a little bit more these days. But like, they said the other day that there's no one who's advocate. There's nobody who is Slate or Salon or some left-wing blog posted an article that American conservatives, some of them, were praising the Taliban because the Taliban was making these dank memes, of which they were.
Oh, they were, yeah,
they were making dank memes, and there were American conservatives who were out there giving them props.
I was one of them. Absolutely. It's funny. Like, it's funny as hell. Does that make me a Taliban sympathizer? I mean, I fought the sons of bitches. No, it's just like, bro, that's the condition where, and I was going to get to this with you on the Biden administration, but I was going to get to that. But like, I'm sorry. Like, the very same people that we fought against for so many different years are skull dragging the Biden administration. I'm kind of like, this is funny. And I find myself like, we're living in the Twilight Zone, bro. We're living in the Twilight Zone.
Here's the thing. There were big name conservatives out there who were just lying through their teeth
about
trying to, playing tribal politics, saying, oh, this isn't happening. Oh. There are no conservatives who are praising the Taliban. And I'm just like going, you guys need to check some comment sections on social media.
That's the state of affairs that we live in now. It's like McCarthyism in various different contexts. It's like, oh, you can't say anything good about the Taliban. It's like, well, they have some fucking fire ass memes, dude. There's no denying that. Like, this shit's funny. It's funny. Like well, and it's like, oh no, you can't laugh at that because those are the bad guys. And meanwhile, you have Democrats, the very same people that are, it's like, oh my God, you're praising the Taliban, are like saying that we're akin to the Taliban for like the heartbeat bill that just passed here in Texas.
It's kind of like, and there you go. See, and John, I have a sense of humor. Okay, like I realize, no one gets out of life alive, right? Yeah. We're all gonna die, and we need to, like, every once in a while we need a YOLO, we need a carpe diem, we need to laugh. But like, conservatives were mad at me the other day because I was making jokes about apple flavored horse paste. Okay, now I went down to the tractor store here in Jefferson City, okay? Completely just, for whatever, just walked in, and I said, hey, have people been coming in here and buying up the horse dewormer and the sheep dewormer? And the girl leaned over the counter with that country accent, and she goes, they have been buying that stuff all day long. They've been selling it out. And see, it's funny, but when I talked about that, people were mad at me. They're like, you're not taking it, you're buying into the left's propaganda. And I'm like, no, I'm laughing because there are some fire-ass memes about people eating apple-flavored horse paste, and that is funny.
It's freaking hilarious.
Yes. It's just a joke, John. That's the problem, is that people are so up their own ass. But I mean, that's the authoritarian mindset. Yeah. Right? The authoritarian mindset is that the emperor that wears no clothes, right? They are so conceited and so full of themselves and so sure of their own power and glory and perfectness and perfection that how dare anyone laugh at them or make a joke about something so serious and stuff like that. And it's kind of like, you know what? Taliban's got some fire memes. That's hilarious. Doesn't mean I agree with them.
I mean, they've really come a long way. I mean, the fact that Taliban are out there memeing us is like, they've come along. I mean, it's better than getting freaking RPGs thrown at us. But to the state of affairs,
they realize that memes are more powerful than RPGs.
That, in a weird way, you're actually kind of right, because it conveys these ideologies that go viral and it trends. But so right now with the Biden administration, the Afghanistan debacle, all the COVID, I think Biden's about to do a speech today when he's going to outline the 6-point plan for COVID lockdowns, which it looks like, from my speculation, he's trying to go at this economically and economically put pressure on American citizens, just like Australia's possibly going to be doing, as far as saying if you're not vaccinated, you won't be able to participate in the economy. You won't be able to participate in life. You're going to isolate yourself. And I have this weird feeling that Biden's going to take the same approach. What are your thoughts on this?
What I'm hearing is that the Biden administration is going to start to tighten the noose. And what they're going to do is they're going to start with federal employees, and they're going to remove exemptions that people have requested for federal employees.
Knew that was coming. The religious exemption, because you sit there, you give them a feeder road to take, and naturally people are going to take it, and then you pull the feeder road. It's like, well, then what the hell did you even do that to begin with? So,
see, John, I'm in the awkward position of wanting to oppose everything that Biden does, but wanting to see a lot of feds quit.
Oh my dude, what about David what's his nuts from the ATF nominee that I guess Biden shot down? But here's the thing that scares me about this. Everybody on the right is praising this, but it's like, look, the devil who like, if there was a dude that they wanted to run the ATF that leaned in unison with the Democratic Party, it's this douchebag. But if they're turning this guy down, and if it's because of the Waco incident, I think that has, but who are they going to put up next?
Well, can I at least take one bite of my cornflakes before you piss in them? Can I just have one bite?
I know, but I mean, I feel like we're celebrating early. It's like we're giving the woman the towel before we even finish. I mean, like we gotta pump the brakes on this.
I took a bite. You go ahead and piss all over my cornflakes.
I just don't want people to get their hopes up. It's like, look, guys, it's a solid win. But if Biden is turning this dude down, who does he have in the chute? Because I guarantee he's got somebody that's probably even worse than this guy. And I don't know how you can get much worse than a Waco responsible dude. Here's where
the victory was in this battle. The victory wasn't the war necessarily. The victory was in the battle, and we won the battle because we delayed that nominee and forced them to go through confirmation after confirmation and confirmation, and to have failure after failure after failure of vote. Right. So for us right now, winning is not losing. Okay, so we win by continuing to divert the Democrats from being able to get people across. So here's the thing: they have to start all over again. They've got to go through the confirmation process again. They've got to vet individuals. They've got to, get senators on board. They've got to twist arms. So that's classic Sun Tzu strategy right there. You win by not losing. Just stay alive to fight another day, and keep them, burning up resources until the fall of Saigon.
Oh my God, we can't joke about that with Kabul happening. Like it's too close. So I'm triggered, bro. You can't joke about that.
Not too soon. I'm glad you've said that. Too soon.
Not at all, bro. Not at all.
You're gonna love this, John. I think you could use this in the future.
Offend me harder, Daddy.
No, you're gonna love this. You're gonna love this. So some scientists actually did a study on when it's too soon to make a joke. Where because 9/11 is coming up tomorrow, right? So it's like what they found was because they told jokes to people, horrible jokes about events that would happen, and they would test their response is.
Mm-hmm.
And they found that the 15 days after a tragedy is too soon to joke about it. But if you wait 36 days after a tragedy and make the joke, then everybody will think it's the funniest thing ever. But for some reason, people have like a 15-day period where it's like, can't joke about it, don't say it. 36
Bro,
days.
as soon as that shit show started, a lot of these military meme pages that I follow were jumping on the train. And I'm saying that's like, and people are like, oh, that's so offensive. Like, that's the military. Yeah. Like, I'm surprised they weren't going harder in the paint on these dark humor jokes in regards to the Taliban and us getting our asses kicked over there, according to the politicians and stuff. So, I mean, yeah. I mean, honestly, in this day and age, I mean, if you look at like comedy per se, you look at like programs like Saturday Night Live and the woke mob has ruined comedy. It's even comedians like Dave Chappelle have come out and said this stuff. It's like, you know, you've destroyed comedy. Well, there's certain things we can't joke about now. Like, no, back in the day, you joked about anything, suicide. I mean, they'd probably be cracking jokes about 9/11. So I can't really agree with people saying, you know, it's too soon. It's like, there is nothing off the table when it comes to dark humor. There's nothing. And if you don't like it, we based our judgment of comedy on how people around us are going to respond versus like, how does that make you feel? So when people tell like these dark humor jokes, I laugh, and there's no shame in that. Like when they do veteran suicide jokes, yeah, it's a serious issue, but people joke about things. It's a method of how you deal with stuff. So I'm not even going to sit there and pretend like I don't laugh. I laugh 100% because it's funny. Now, do I take it seriously? Of course not. I'm not advocating for that, but it seems like we've lost all reasonable sense of humor because if you do and you offend somebody, well, then you got to stop. Like that was the point of humor, is to offend through comedy.
Can I ask you something that I've been struggling with and get your feedback on it? So I'm kind of like conflicted by this concept where it's like, you know, we have these veteran suicides and we have like a crisis of masculinity, if you will, in the United States, where it's like, on one hand, I feel like we're too soft, right? And that we are too hyper feminized, right? And that we need good, healthy masculinity in this country. And then, you know, when I see like the people like conservatives and like, you know, tough guys out there saying on Twitter things like, you know, it's only acceptable for a man to cry in such and such, you know, circumstance, right? And I think, you know, one of the problems I think that American men have is that we cannot talk about our feelings. We can't talk about our feelings because of the way other men will judge us if we do. But worse, we can't talk about our feelings because of the way women will judge us when we do. Because there's nothing, you know, like we can take, you know, being teased by guys or is whatever. As long as the girls like you, you know, guys will be just fine. But like you have, you know, conservative women who are out there like, I don't want to ever see a man cry. Like there's nothing that turns me off worse than seeing a man talk about his emotions or his feelings or, you know, like I see that a lot. I see that a lot. Yeah, I see it a lot from young conservative women, you know, the types that you were kind of talking about earlier.
That traditional push to where they want to be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen.
Right. And that's fine. But I mean, they're out there espousing it too. Like, so, I mean, the soonest way to get a guy to shut up is to tell him he's acting gay, right? when he's really trying to express, hey, bud, I'm thinking about killing myself because I served in Kabul and I just watched my friends get exploded over there and you know, in Afghanistan, and I'm thinking about committing suicide. Is that gay? You know, it's kind of like, how do we thread the needle here with like having a healthy sense of masculinity that's sensitive to the needs of men? Like, you know, this is kind of a personal story, but like 2 days ago, my across the street neighbor was killed in a motorcycle accident. He's got 2 young boys, right? Like 7 years old, 13 years old, live right across the street. Saw them last night, grief stricken, could barely speak, these 2 young boys. And it's kind of like, how do you speak to them and get them to express themselves and to help them develop an healthy emotional sense of self as a man and be masculine, but also be in touch with, you'll say a feminine side, but I'll just call it like a healthy emotional masculinity. How do we do this? How do we have that healthy masculinity that we need, that some people call toxic masculinity or whatever, and also deal with the problems that men need to talk about the problems, or we're going to keep sticking shotguns in our mouth and blowing the back of our heads off.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up because I feel like with the emergence of, say, for example, like organizations like the BLM, even though I disagree with the majority of their stances, they definitely initiated a lot of conversations that needed to happen in regards to people starting to, myself included, people starting to wake up to how much power the police actually have. Tyrants behind a badge. Now, what the BLM stood for, in my opinion, was honestly black supremacy. I felt like they were trying to harp on a lot of things in regards to equality they already have. I think it led, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm doing better to stay on topic, but I think a lot of these movements start out by leftist progressives to combat things that go against, say, for example, the toxic masculinity feminists. I think your third wave campus feminists did not like that men were supposed to act a certain way. And what they wanted was essentially to feminize men. But it definitely brought up conversations in regards to veteran suicide being one of them, that toxic masculinity does exist. And the confines, in my opinion, of toxic masculinity is you were to say, hey, you know, John, I'm thinking about killing myself. Toxic masculinity would be like, look, dude, deal with your shit like a fucking man. Like, you know, stop being a pussy. Versus, in my opinion, it shifted towards like, look, dude, be a man and go get help. Go talk to somebody. Don't sit there and dwell on it. So there's a happy medium. And I think I often find more times than not, the truth lies where the pendulum goes too far, one way or the other. And I think it's somewhere in the center. And I think, yeah, toxic masculinity does exist. It's this ego-driven, and don't get me wrong, ego can be a great component to use when striving to be better. You know, like it's like the classic, you get on a treadmill and there's somebody next to you. It's like, okay, who's running faster, motherfucker? Like steel sharpens steel. And that's what you need. Like, and there's different contexts to display masculinity in such a means. Like being in the military, if I was to ever go back in, which I can't, I'm too old, and thank God because I never served under Biden. But if I was to go back in, I would have a dynamic shift of my personality into an alpha male again. But I'm not in the military anymore. I'm not a soldier. I'm not like a lot of these dudes out there. It's like, I'm a soldier for life. It's like, no, I'm not. I was like, I'm a commentator. I'm a business owner. It's like, that's not my bread and butter anymore. I don't have to be that. I did that for 13 years. It's time to leave that behind and move on. But I think it depends on the context. Like I was always raised that being a man was your word is your bond. You stand for what you believe in. You provide for your family, and you don't kneel to anybody. And, you know, and everybody has their own different opinion of that, of what being a man means. But I think it got lost somewhere in the context of what feminism said that men should be, and then what your toxic masculinity types said they should be. But at the same token, I can't fault toxic men in today's generation for being the way they are. That's how we were raised. You know, we're still of the generation where toxic masculinity was a main thing, especially in the military. Like, you know, don't be fucking gay, bro. And now we've seen a shift to where it's like, hey, it's okay to be gay. Like, we accept you. Like, we love you for who you are. And I grew up in that fashion to where you're like, yeah, don't be a fucking gay guy. And now it's like, dude, I don't care what you do with your life. Like, I don't agree with it from a theological standpoint, but I'm just not going to go out there and suck a dick. It's just that simple. Live and let live, you know? And I think we're finding that balance. I think a lot of these progressive movements that were rooted in a supremacy of some sort actually spawned some really good conversations. And that's not me agreeing with them. It's just saying like, hey, we're actually having conversations now that we probably should have had a long time ago. But, you know, it's a good point that you make. Like, where is the happy medium? And I think that falls on every individual person. So if you have conservative women out there that are like, I don't want to see my man cry, that's not going to be a very healthy relationship. And I'm not trying to hog the mic here, but I'm glad you brought that up because I go to therapy. I see a therapist twice a month now, and it's not for the sake of saying, oh, I'm so fucked up. It's in the context of he's giving me tools of how to deal with a lot of the emotional things that I've dealt with my entire life that I did not realize were destroying my life and relationships. And toxic masculinity was certainly one of them. Like, I come home, I'm the man of the house, what I say goes, when it should have been, we're a partner, we're a team. Like, I don't want someone that I'm going to be in control over. And a lot of conservative women want that. And if that's what you want, find you a man like that. But I think that's just, you know, the tools that I picked up.
You want to know, I love this conversation. I think this is probably a big part of what we, you know, men need to be talking about a lot more today. Mm-hmm. And usually the problem is that it's always been when you have these kinds of like get together, like cry fest with guys, it's always been in the context of religion. Where it's kind of like you know get better through Christ, heal through Christ, and that God is the way, like the solution.
I'm not saying that's not true. I'm saying if you want spirituality, that plays a huge role in it. I can understand that, but also you're not going to have a one-on-one therapy session with Jesus. And I believe in Jesus. Yeah, I believe in God. I believe in prayer, but I also believe that Jesus gives people the power and the tools to, through therapists, learning and educating. You know.
You know, on the concept of going back to like what triggers people, you want to know what else really triggers people, John, is if you try and tell them that life is actually improving steadily over time, or that if you tell people that things are actually not that bad, the screaming pundits on Twitter,
if you put this down, you'll find that life ain't that bad. 100%.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yes, you will. But here's the thing. That is triggering, because you know why? We are addicted to rage in this country. We are
being victims,
hatred and just absolute, but the basest attacks on your enemies and your opponents, and I'm guilty of that. I am so guilty of that. Right hand to God, I am guilty of that.
I like that you switched them. You were like right hand. Oh wait, Brad.
Well, I didn't know if I was mirrored or not, so it looks like
You're good.
But I just want to be healthy.
Yeah.
I just want to be healthy. I want to be physically healthy, and I want to be mentally healthy, because I want to be a great husband, and I want to be a good father, and I want to be I want to be an asset to my community. And becoming president of the United States as a libertarian, running for Senate and things like that. Yeah, sure, those are big important things, but like,
you got one life to live, brother. You got one life to live.
We can have as men in our society is quite frequently what happens in our locality, in our communities, right? Like how I now interact with my neighbors and their kids after this tragedy, could be something that defines my life, right? It certainly is defining it right now.
Or theirs,
and then, and how I relate to my fiance and to my soon-to-be wife, how I treat her, and how I, the life that I build for her, could leave, legacy for generations. And I'm a lot bigger picture thinker in some ways, whereas I feel like in many ways before I was much more of an ideologue and kind of trapped into a small bubble where I interacted with a certain amount of people trying to accomplish small things, small
so
things.
So it sounds to me like you're saying you are more futuristic focused versus how you were more momentarily focused. Like, I want to change the things around me here and now, but you're starting to look forward to the future, saying, what am I doing now that my future descendants could also reap benefits from? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. How can I make the world a better place for like my descendants? And like, and I actually care deeply about like my audience and my listeners on the radio show here, because they trust me during this pandemic for the last year, like having to report on something that I have no effing clue, John, epidemiology and virology. I mean, like, I didn't know squat, right? So I had to be so careful about what I would advocate or what I would tell people. And I felt that sense of responsibility when people were afraid to inform them in a way that would leave a positive, lasting legacy. People wouldn't be like, that guy led me astray, or that told me, that guy said, no, don't get vaccinated, and now and I didn't, and now my sister's dead, or whatever. You know what I mean? So
and you got vaccinated, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I got it early, but I'm like, I like being a guinea pig. Like, I know that freaks, I know
it's one of my fetishes.
Yeah, I know that freaks people out, and they're like, oh, it's untested. But I mean, like, I know a lot of people who didn't take the vaccine who snort stuff up their nose that they have no idea what is in it. So, the one hand is like, I don't know. I feel like
I think it's actually. Fuck it, I'll just say, I think it's a good thing that we're going through this, because I think people are starting to wake up and realize, number one, how incompetent the government is. Number two, the weaponization and politicization. Jesus Christ, I'm like, I need more coffee today. The political weaponization of a lot of these government entities to push a political narrative, whether it be true or not, is a very scary concept. And I remember, like I told people, you're the one that turned me on to Milton Friedman. And then if you go look at his abolishment of the FDA discussions, you'll see firsthand right now how free market is running its course. And people like yourself are saying, I'll be a guinea pig. And there's people like me saying, nah, I'm going to step back and I'm going to wait and watch. And I don't even trust the FDA. I don't trust the CDC. I don't trust the WHO or the government. So it's just one of those things of like, there are going to be those that will willingly step up and say, I'll get vaccinated, and we'll just watch you. And that way we don't have to have the FDA come in and,
Nobody likes me because I think Anthony Fauci should be in prison and people should go get vaccinated.
It just busted again. Rand Paul called Fauci yet again on another series of lies he got in. And why is this guy still employed? Like, why is he still employed?
I don't know, but Donald Trump should have fired him when he had a chance,
Well, honestly, I was talking about this with Andy Crenshaw, Jesus Christ. I was talking about this with Crenshaw the other day, and basically saying, like, when this first kicked off, like, I bought into it. Like, they had us running scared. I believe COVID was coming, like, hey, it's coming from China, and I was like, close the borders. And Trump's like, close the borders. And then Joe Biden was like, yeah, you're a xenophobe. And then Biden's preaching for closing the border. Like, politicians you can count on, they will always flip-flop. But I bought into it at first, and then we took a step back and we're like, okay, wait a minute. There's something going on here. Like, something's not right. Then there's the conspiracy theorists, the QAnon people that are like espousing all this bullshit, and that made it even more difficult to distinguish truth from facts. And then you got people on the left and the right both doing it. And it seems like now, like you literally just said, I'm not a virologist. I'm not an epidemiologist. So I've never told people you should go get vaccinated. I'm simply saying this is my choice, and this is why I'm making said choice. This vaccine could be healthy for all I know. I mean, I don't know. But the point is, I don't trust the government. I don't trust the FCC or the FDA. So I'm going to kind of take a step back and just watch it play out, because I've already had my experience with burn pits and shit like that. The government's like, oh, yeah, we screwed up on that one.
Did they give you the anthrax vaccine?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anthrax, smallpox, the whole shebang. But I mean, there was also prior tests on this for a long period of time, though. So it was kind of, it's been tested for a long time.
A pandemic is one of those things where, like, if you were in the Spanish flu and they had the technology to do what they can do now, they'd had the technology to do then, don't you think that they would have been like, yes, please, can we please have this vaccine? Because they didn't have access to it, and now we have access. And we're
but you're also conflating two casualty figures, though. You've got a Spanish flu that took out millions, and you've got a COVID thing where the survivability rating, as admitted to by Fauci, is like a 98% survivability rating. And then if you look at like the grand screaming of 350 million and 500,000 have died, which again, those numbers, we don't know if they were conflated or not, and data manipulated for the sake of a political outcome. What my point is that we don't know what to believe anymore. So when people want to use these COVID
it's
numbers,
hard to know who to trust.
Exactly. So they say, hey, 500,000 people have died. It's like, wait, at first I believed it. Now it's like, wait a minute, is that actually true? Because then there was talk of like the federal government was paying hospitals money that are dealing with COVID. And so naturally, just like academia, just like healthcare, there's like, oh, well, I can get more money. Oh, guess what? You just died from COVID, even though it was like cancer. And then they're getting more money, and then that ups the COVID numbers, and it's like, oh, this is a very deadly virus. So to sit there,
like, you have to be careful of like the confirmation bias in this one. Like a lot of my libertarian friends were like, before the FDA, like when it was in the emergency authorization phase, some of my libertarian friends were like, well, I'm not going to get the vaccine because it hasn't been proven and it hasn't been approved like other drugs that the FDA has got. I'm like, wait a minute. So you're telling me that you are waiting for the you as a libertarian will care what the FDA has to say about it, and then once the FDA had approved it and it had gone past the emergency phase, they go, well, I'm still not going to get it now. I don't trust the FDA, blah blah blah. And I was just like,
I think it was more of an argument point.
The whole time.
Yeah, I think it was more of an argumentative point in regards to this. You have to be pragmatic when we're debating. So yeah, the libertarian principle of we don't want an FDA, we don't want an FCC, we don't want an. I'm in agreement with this, and people don't see the long-term effects. But I think we have to be pragmatic about our debates. So the debate is, look, for those that actually believe in the FDA, which I think an overwhelming majority of people do, it's using that principle against them, saying, look, even your own FDA is not approving this. It's using not you specifically, but it's using their talking points against them. But it's also concerning that, most clinical trials, and here's another thing, we talk about the manipulation of the media. Go Google how long clinical trials usually occur in the FDA. It's very hard to find.
Oh, yeah. I know. It's a long time. But I don't believe in that. I don't believe in those kinds of clinical trials that require that. I am more than happy to take new and experimental drugs that just rolled off the assembly line, and I feel like people should be free to do that.
100%.
Because in my libertarian world, there would be no FDA, and if I want to take it, it's like the reason why people are going to the tractor store to buy apple-flavored horse paste is because the war on drugs has required them to get a prescription for human ivermectin. And if their doctor won't prescribe that to them, they're going to the tractor store to buy it. But like, I'll get conservatives who will come on my show and say, like, senators, state senators, and I'll say, well, Senator, do you think that people should be going down to the tractor store and, buying apple-flavored horse paste and eating it? and they'll say, I may not recommend that. However, I will say that I think people should own their bodies and should be able to do with it as they please, and they should be able to put whatever they want in their body. It's not my job. And they'll say, and they'll be libertarians, and I'll go, okay. I go, but you're not. But I go, but you're lying, because if I want to go down to the store and buy black tar heroin, you'd have a problem with that, wouldn't you, Senator?
Ooh,
oh,
it's true.
Well, yes. I go, and then I would say, so the state does own our bodies to an extent, right? So you don't really believe that people own their bodies, because if people want to go down and buy ivermectin right next to black tar heroin, I think they should. If they want to get a vaccine while they're at it, great. That's up to them. But people only believe what they believe, typically out of expediency. Does it help them, their political position at that moment? Does it confirm their biases immediately? They don't give a shit about the truth. They just want to confirm their biases so they can feel good and be like, I am the smartest man alive.
This is going to make for some fire-ass memes.
I'm going to get so many followers from this.
I mean, you're right. You're 100% right. I'll admit that we have to admit the human condition of confirmation bias or negative association bias. It does exist. Halo effect's a big one when you talk about conservatives with Trump. These things do exist. And I think that as we've grown older, especially the last 4 to 6 years, we've come to the understanding that there's a lot of people, there's a lot of Charlie Kirks and people out there trying to do the own the libs and these viral things. And then you kind of take a step back and just like, wait a minute. Like, what are you really accomplishing here? Like, we're not changing minds. We're just making people angry. We're just trying to get these viral clips and get more followers and chase the clout and get as close to the White House as we can. It's a power grab for many people out there. But to me, it's just, you've been on the show a few times, and when I was hosting Drunken Debates, I might bring that back, actually. But there was, we had conservatives, we had communists, we had socialists, we had transgender. You were on once or twice, and we had some really good discussions. And I don't think the goal necessarily was to try and change people's minds or a gotcha moment, but it was simply to showcase different perspectives and why we believe the things we do. And then also acknowledge the fact that sometimes we do get it wrong, and it is okay to change your mind on certain things. And I feel like ego plays an intricate role in that we double down on our bias for the sake of not wanting to be wrong. And when you remove that ego, you're going to find that you're actually going to grow and learn a lot. And, of course, there's certain things I will never change my mind on because I'm so steadfast, my religious preferences, things such as that. But there's other things that I like. You changed my mind on the Second Amendment. I attributed a lot of my lack of understanding of the Constitution and then reversing that to the first time I had you on the show and we debated bump stocks, and you changed my mind on that. And then it was kind of like, well, wait a minute. Like, if I'm feeling this way, there's a lot of Trump supporters that are feeling this way, and people need to wake up to this. And so that's when people say, like, are you a Trump supporter? It's like, I agree with a lot of what he's done, and I disagree with a lot of what he's done, and people don't know how to take that because you're either all or nothing. And it's like, no, you can be in between. You can say there are certain issues I agree on, there's certain issues I disagree on, and that blows people's mind.
You honor me with your kind words, John, and I'll plant this other seed in your mind. This is something else to think about.
Yes, I like this.
Scientists have determined that the portion of your brain that deals with fight or flight is the same portion of your brain where like your views, beliefs, and like deeply held, convictions those are all in the same part of the brain. And so what that means is that when someone is attacking your political beliefs or your fundamental worldview, the part of your brain that thinks it's being violently attacked lights up. So your brain doesn't distinguish between physical violence and an attack on your views. That is why people react. Like if you told the Taliban that Muhammad was a cocksucker who never existed and it was a made-up religion in order to compete with Christianity and Judaism because they were all jealous at the time, and they wanted the cohesiveness of that society, right? And then drew a picture and held it up, right? They would be that their part of their brain, they would shoot you with the guns that Joe Biden gave them, right? They would murder you with the attack choppers because they see that as because they are unable to differentiate between a violent physical attack and an attack on your beliefs.
100%, because they say that essentially when you first perceive a statement or a thought, it goes through the emotional portion of your brain. And it takes a little while before it hits the logic. I think it's in the forefront because I talked about this with my therapist. It takes a while before it hits the there was somebody else. But it takes a while before it hits the emotional forefront portion of your brain. So that's when people say when you react out of emotion, and trust me, I'm super guilty of this one, it's an emotional reaction. But if you would sit down and you would pause, you would give it some thought, and then you process it and you think about it. It's like when they say when you're in a heated argument, take a step back, go cool down, and give it time to process in your brain. And then you think about things without the emotion there clouding your judgment. It's like, oh, shit, you know what? They were kind of right. And then that's when we start to learn. Or it's like, no, I still feel like I was right, but here's why. And then you remove the emotion from it. So, yeah, I think, and that's, unfortunately, we have a lot of stupid people in this country that will never even listen to a conversation like this. They will never want to acknowledge that. They'll just write you off as like, oh my God, you're a libertarian. You want to sell drugs to the kid. Burke's a fence rider, yada, yada, yada. They'll never want to listen to something like that because, again, confirmation bias, attack on identity.
You know, I kind of like, one of the lessons that stuck with me from like my time in like politics and media was like, it's not about the great masses of people that you're speaking to, but like when you want to make conversions, it's like sales. Like you'll make 100 phone calls for like one sale, and like your one sale was what you needed to make that day in order to get your quote or whatever. And like what I have found is that like the people over the years that I have connected with, that I have made an actual impact in their life, were worth way more than the 99 people who thought Austin was an asshole and attacked me on Twitter or whatever. Yeah. But so like it really is like a quality over a quantity thing there. Yeah. So like the great masses of people are stupid, probably always have been, and probably always will be. Yeah. Always will be. And so therefore, an enlightened, and I'm going to use this word that's really not popular, elite will probably be the only people who will ever be the vanguard of advancing ideas. It's only a small groups of people that have ever changed history, right? That have ever been brave enough to change history. What was the 3%ers, right? Their whole mantra was like only 3% of the people like fought in the American Revolution. So I mean, I'm okay with that. And I try not to look at people as sheep, and I try not to like look at the great masses of people. A social media influencer told me recently, she's like this girl who like left-wing politics because she was tired of all the brainwashing and indoctrination. Really cool girl, you'd like her. She talked about how she was always trying to get followers, and it was always just about numbers and posting memes that would, get reactions and get up your accounts big so you could make a lot of money or whatever. But what she said was that she changed her approach, and her approach was that she stopped looking at them as numbers and started looking at them as people. And like now I kind of want to be like that again, because I know I was like that at once. But when you start getting deluged, John, you start getting thousands and thousands, millions of people are following and watching your stuff. It's not easy to like have personal connections with people. No. So the challenge for people like yourself is to kind of like try and find the people there whose lives you can really make an impact in.
You see, I'm the exact opposite. Well, first off, who is this? Because I would love to have her on the show and have a discussion about that.
You would like her a lot. She's not experienced with media, and she's just starting to kind of get her feet wet with it, but she might be a great interview for you, honestly.
Would love to, yeah.
Yeah, she buttons lives on Instagram. So buttons, like just like a shirt button. And then lives, like past lives. So Buttons Lives on Instagram. She's like out there now. She's like speaking out against leftist indoctrination online. She said she worked for some groups that were like foreigners, like in Australia, who were trying to stir up radical hatred here in the United States with like all the BLM stuff that was going on. And she's like, I'm tired of this. She's like, this is racism.
Is this the one with the purple hair?
Yeah.
That's fitting.
Yes.
If
you get in touch with her, say that you heard about her from me. You guys would get along great. I think she'd be a great interview for you. And she's the type of person that is just out there, waiting to, be connected with in a way that will dramatically change their life in a way that, the 1,000 people who comment on your videos, could never be, right? But and that's what matters. If you change that person's life, right? Imagine now she can go out and influence others and all of that. Finding those meaningful interactions right there, those not necessarily face-to-face, but in that vein is going to be, I think, so much more rewarding. The social media, I'm looking at it now, should be a way to get offline, right? Yeah. The social media should be a way to have things happen in person. Let's do events that are live. Yeah, we'll publicly play them for people who can't come for whatever reason. Yeah. But let's get together again. Let's get in person. Let's do public debates. Let's be social in real life again, because it's easy to hate people that you don't know.
It's different
easy
when it's face to face.
People you don't see, or or you can't see the expression on their face when what you said to them has that impact. That's why I think social media can be so toxic, and we need to get back social and in person.
You see, I've actually found the opposite to be entirely true, because before it was, and this is something I fight with on a daily basis, it's not reading the comments. Because unfortunately, you're going to have people that will come at you not with the intent of having a discussion. The intent is to attack and to troll. So you're kind of caught in this conundrum of sorts that you either respond to these people, because it's my human nature that you'll see all the good comments, but you don't want to respond to a lot of them, because if you do, it looks as if you're just sucking your own dick and you love the praise.
Right.
Or you hone in on the one negative comment, and then people start to say, well, you only respond to the negative comments. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Or you just do this, which is what I've been doing. You meme it, you put your opinion out there, and I let them squabble. It's like, this is how I see it. I owe nobody an explanation. Or I tell them, it's like, you want my explanation? Go to my podcast. That's where I talk about it. So I don't really interact with the comments anymore. I try not to. Every so often I'll get a troll that just says something so incredibly just egregious, like, all right, I'm going to make an example out of you. And it's just for content purposes. You know, it drives your story views up because it's fun. People love being entertained. We're entertainers at heart to an extent.
Sure.
We're entertainers with conviction, I guess you could say. But
don't you have people, John, that like you that say to you, John, you made me think about this in a way I had never thought before.
But that was not a personal connection.
That personal experience, isn't that worth all those crappy comments?
To be honest with you, I mean, it helps. Don't get me wrong. And yes, I do get comments. I do get DMs like that. But that wasn't through a one-on-one interaction. It was just me putting my beliefs out into the ether, and you do with them as you will. Now, as far as it being worth it, man, I won't even lie to you and say that I draw any type of response that just pleasures me. It's just kind of like, cool. Like, it's awesome. Like, I'm just being honest. Like, I don't really get a big response from that. I think the biggest responses I get, I mean, for me personally, are through self-accomplishments, through like Shell Shock CBD, running a business, doing stuff like that. If you change someone's mind, it's almost the offensive. Okay, cool. There's 349 million other motherfuckers that we got to do this. It's kind of like, I don't know. And I'm not downplaying it. I'm not saying it's not valuable, but I'm saying I don't get this type of, and the comments do help. The motivation does help. Don't get me wrong, but it's not something that I sit and dwell on. It's like, oh man, because you can't. Because if you do, you could quite easily develop a God complex. Somebody said, John, I've had people that's like, John, I lost over 100 pounds. It saved my life. So if I dwell on that, it's like, oh man, I just can't suck my own dick enough, I guess. Or it's just like, hey man, I'm happy for you. But what I think ultimately the goal is, though, is you got to turn it around and be like, that wasn't me, that was you. Like, you're the one that got your fat ass off the couch and exercised. That wasn't me. I just said some words. You let them sink in and you took them seriously, and then you went and did something. It's you. So a lot of that is also making sure that they have accurately aimed praise. It's like, I think, and I don't like when people do that. It's just like, it's because of you. It's like, no, it wasn't. Like, I didn't do the work. You did. So make sure you're accurate in your praise, because ultimately that leads to more self-confidence, self-fulfillment that you did this. Like, don't ever discredit what your accomplishments were. And that also includes you changing your own mind. It wasn't me. I just gave you the information. You changed your mind. You had the willful ability to sit there and say, you know what? I've changed my mind. Just like veteran suicide. When people say that, it's out of their choice. No, it's not. There is no PTSD symptom that removes the idea of choice from you. It doesn't exist. I mean, I've studied this in college. I've spent time with therapists on this. Depression, hypervigilance, paranoia, all these things. None of them are to the point where they force you to put a gun in your mouth. None. So there's always a choice. Now, I'm not saying that choice is an easy one to make, but it always exists. It's always there. You can choose to try and continue to go get help and continue to fight, or you choose to end it. So, and that's a hard pill to swallow. That's a hard topic to discuss, because people don't like that. They don't like bearing responsibility for said choices. And I think that a lot of that boils down to the fact that I'm just a hardcore idealist, and it gets me in a lot of hot water. But it's just like you said, like, you have those prominent figures throughout history that's like, hey guys, I don't like being in a groupthink. I like thinking for myself. So when I came out and started talking about a lot of these PTSD awareness movements are bullshit, people are like, bro, you want to see veterans kill themselves? Like, no. I was like, we need to approach this from a more pragmatic, realistic approach. Spreading awareness of PTSD, suicide, people already know. They just don't fucking care. So let's acknowledge the state that we live in now and figure out other alternative methods to combating veteran suicide. And, again, and I'm not trying to go down that rabbit hole, but the point still being is that we should never remove the freedom of choice from our own mind. And that comes through, again, like I said, when you get those comments, like, it's you did it, not me. So, and I understand what your friend is talking about, like having that emotional connection, understand that each person or each number is an actual person. But if you go about it with that approach, man, I think a lot of it was me stifling myself for fear of offending people. There was a good while on social media I wouldn't do it, and now I'm like, I don't fucking care. Like I'm done. Like I admit I stifled myself. Mr. Fuck your feelings himself.
Like, I've gone the opposite way, where it's like I used to just be like whatever. But now I'm kind of like I'll fill in my head like a little bit of a quota. You know what I mean? Where it's kind of like, it's like, I have like a certain amount that I can offend whatever constituency for a certain amount of time, and then I'm kind of like, all right, and like sometimes I'll have like just an awesome horse dewormer joke, and I'm just like, you know what? I've already posted 3 memes on this today.
I better let it go.
Of course.
And people get so mad. Is that all you're posting about? Like, yeah, it's my page. I post about whatever the fuck I want. Like,
I know.
The other thing that blows my mind about followers.
Here's the thing, like, I really have been losing a lot of followers lately. I'm not gonna lie, and it's like in part because I just like have been just offending everybody during the whole pandemic, and just not giving a shit, and then like. I think, a couple, with the ivermectin thing, the horse jokes, I lost like 200 followers on Twitter and stuff like that. And I'm just kind of like, okay. It's like at some point I do remember there would be my friends who would be like, okay, Austin, you've had your fun. Like, it's time to stop. And I like would recognize, okay, because I'm the classic like overkill kind of a person. Like, I'll beat something and then I'll just keep beating it, and I do need to kind of like chill. So
well, then a lot of it comes off as like you're doing the Milo approach of I'm trolling just to troll now, and I think that's why and this brings up another topic that I actually wasn't planning on discussing this, but you talk about alt-right people. I get asked at least once or twice on the shows something like, would you ever debate Nick Fuentes? It's like, no, I would never give that guy a platform. He's a piece of shit in my mind. But a lot of these people that did not want to play by social media rules have been deplatformed and forgotten. Milo, forgotten. Laura Loomer, until she ran for Congress, forgotten. People forget them. Once they deplatform you, you're gone. And people will forget you. They will not be there to support you. So what sucks about it is you do have to play by social media's rules to an extent. You can't go off. You can't go crazy. You can't say what you truly want to say, because if you do, you're deplatformed. So you have to figure out tactics and how to tactfully say something without violating terms of services. Like we had a YouTube live feed. I got a strike against my account, my first strike, that we were on the show discussing COVID. And I was literally quoting what Fauci was saying, what the CDC was saying, and then I was giving my opinion, not in a sense of, oh, it doesn't work, just in a sense of like you and I just talked about. And I got it pulled down because YouTube said you're spreading medical misinformation. It's like, I'm giving an opinion, but in nowhere in my speech to say I'm a subject matter expert and the vaccine doesn't work or the vaccine does work. I've never said that. I said I don't trust it because I don't know. And I do feel a responsibility with a lot of followers out there in that regard, because it's their personal safety. And I hate saying this, but there's a lot of people that are very easy to manipulate and brainwash. They really are. So when you say and you make a statement like, hey, guys, go get the vaccine, it's perfectly safe, they buy into it, even though you've already said, hey, I'm not a doctor. And it's like, well, John Burke has a lot of followers, therefore he must have validity in what he says. No, maybe some people just like following me because I'm an asshole, or that I like trolling people sometimes. So I feel like, we are in an age where I have to really censor myself. Otherwise, I'll be deplatformed. So you can get away with saying some things.
We always kind of had to do that before social media, because there were regulations that weren't like technical regulations. You had to watch what you said in public because somebody slap you if you talk about their mama, right? So kind of like that always existed to an extent, but
it's never been as bad as it is now, though.
It's never been as bad as it is now, and especially with the fact that these fact checkers, quote unquote, have made themselves the arbiter of all of that is true. we see now, just how counterintuitive that has become, because remember when the lab leak theory was a conspiracy theory people got banned and still haven't been reinstated.
And they won't bring them back.
Yeah, they won't bring them back because again, what the left is doing, and the people who own social media and these fact checkers, is they're looking for every opportunity that they can to use their power against their political enemies.
Yep.
Do I think that right wingers, if they controlled the social media, would be doing that against left wingers? Yes, I do. I
think so?
Yeah, I do. I think, knowing what I know about, this big government didn't get there on its own. It wasn't on all.
Oh, no, I agree with you on that one. Yes, I agree. Oh man, that's such a baited question, dude. Now you're referencing government versus private market or free market, right? Whatever you want to call it.
But now it's like, some of my conservative friends are vindicated in saying that these social media agencies are almost a branch of government because they're doing what the government is telling them to do.
Or what the government wants to do but can't publicly do it, like, hey, stifle that guy's voice, like remove it. Oh, absolutely. To sit there and think that Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, who's owned by Facebook, to think that these people are not in league with the government, especially left-leaning government entities, that's a fool's dream. They 100% are. They are just.
But the problem is like the same thing with the problem that we have with warrior cops and bad cops. Is that they investigate themselves and they find themselves doing nothing wrong. Yeah. In the sense that if you think that the government is going to solve a problem that the government created, I've got a bridge to sell you, oceanfrend property right here.
That's like the Biden administration praising itself for all the Americans they evacuated out of Afghanistan. It's like, bro, it's like I've said this before. It's like you setting a house on fire and then running in there to rescue the child and then patting yourself on your back for being a hero by saving a child from the house that you set fire to. Like, that makes no sense.
Right. So like you'll get people like Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump and others and Josh Hawley, who will be like, we need to regulate social media so that they don't do this. And if they think they're going to write a law that the social media, the left and the Democrats aren't going to use against conservatives one day, again, I promise you that they will. And so the problem is that we are in a nightmare scenario if you really want like the completely unregulated laissez-faire speech, where the only way out of it I see is something like a Matrix style kind of revolution, where it's like you get people who are warriors that are cyber warriors, meaning people who have a vision of what needs to happen in the future, where it's like we need a base of servers, we need electricity to these servers, we need these servers to be able to handle millions and millions of gigabytes of uploads of videos and content. All this stuff, it needs to go, have probably some rich Republican or whatever, again, Parler, people say, oh, well, Parler, but like, again, they were housed on Amazon, right? Mistake. It needs to be completely.
They should have seen that one coming.
Yeah, they should have seen that coming. It needs to be, there needs to be a social media project or some kind of a connection project for the future that's some kind, like basically like a big library, just a free for all public space where people could go, have a little area of the library, share information, and it can't get taken down because we own the infrastructure. But the problem is that the liberals own almost entirely all of the infrastructure, and that's the problem.
I think even at the same token, though, you've got, you had Parler. Parler was picking up speed until, I don't understand how people did not see that one coming. Like, I am no tech savvy dude. I mean, I know how to look at porn and games and stuff like that, like every common American out there. But how did the creators of Parler not sit there and call into questions like, wait a minute, we're creating an app that's going to be competitive with Twitter, that's essentially going to be an echo chamber for the right, and we house our servers on Amazon, who is in bed with Twitter. How did you not see that coming to the point where, like, oh, by the way, we're going to pull you from the store if you don't set forth certain moderation countermeasures that we agree to, which is essentially it's more censorship of conservative ideas and stuff like that. So the fact that they let it get to that point and then it happened is like, you guys are idiots. Like, really? Like, and I'm surprised because Bongino was part owner. Like, Bongino has common sense. From what I don't really listen to his stuff very much, but from what I can tell, he's a smart dude. So how did people not see this coming? But now we're faced with the conundrum we have now. We have too many right-leaning social media platforms, and nobody knows where to go. We have MeWe, we have Rumble, we have all these things. And man, I was trying to like download all these platforms to create like a backup following on. And it got to the point where it's just like, it's too much. There's Telegram, there's Parler, and the Parler's done. Like, it's over. I had like 30,000 followers over there, and nobody's on Parler anymore. So it's just like, where do conservatives go?
It's a good question. I mean, do we win by engaging, or maybe do we win by walking away? You know, it's like, I struggle with that sometimes because I was watching this documentary the other day about the Soviet Revolution, and it's the Soviet Revolution in color. It's really good. Smithsonian Institute put it out, and they talk about the moment that the communists seized power, and there was an opposing faction to Vladimir Lenin and Trotsky, and the communists were building a government, and they had one oppositional party that held some power in the government, and those people, when Lenin took a majority control of the parliament, the opposition party walked out, which meant that since they were no longer there, that the communists controlled the entire parliament. So there's danger in not being on Twitter. There's danger in not engaging. There's danger in not being on Facebook and countering leftist lies and propaganda.
You have to, especially come election seasons.
It's quite tempting to not give them, the time of day, because maybe if everybody's, you get into a scenario where it's like the Matrix, right? Where like, if you're still plugged into the Matrix, do you remember the part of the Matrix? I'm saying this because the new trailer came out today, so it's in my head. But
what?
Do you remember
There's another Matrix?
The new trailer, Matrix Part 4, Revolution?
What? I didn't know.
Yeah,
that.
It looks great. You need to watch it. It looks so good.
I didn't even know about
think
that.
It looks good. A lot of people are hating on it, but whatever. But they, in the simulation, they found the computer said that when they gave humans a perfect world, everybody kept coming out of the Matrix because they didn't believe it, because it was too unrealistic, right? We expect pain and suffering and things like that. It's like if you ate cupcakes every single day, you'd get sick of cupcakes, right? So part of me wonders if we shouldn't, either stay engaged because we don't want the left to dominate, or walk away, and then they get so bored because there's literally no one to troll, or there's just there's no facts to check. You know what I mean? There's nothing for them to do, so they all fight each other and destroy one another in a sense, right?
Oh, that definitely would happen in regards to them eating each other. We see it on a day-to-day basis with a lot of their hypocritical standards, if you will. But part of me is kind of like, that's where the battle's at, and you've got to go where the battle's at, and not for the sake just necessarily of like trying to just to win. But I think we are, man. It's horrible to say this, but we are moving very rapidly towards an Orwellian society, to where when they control, and this is what really scares me, and I wish Democrats and conservatives would actually see this, that I think conservatives see it more than anybody, but when the Democrats own MSM, they own Hollywood, which Hollywood being one of the most influential, if not the most influential part of the world. Like, a lot of trends start from Hollywood, especially on TikTok. Like, it's just like Vine. They move them all out to Hollywood and stuff like that, and they have their own little creator camps they live in. If we withdraw from this field, then how do we get the information out there, especially like when it comes time to vote, when it comes time to talk about certain presidential candidates or congressional candidates? How do we get those messages out there? Because we're going to go back to reading the newspaper. Well, then who controls the newspaper? It's like, every coup that occurs, the first people they go after is the press. It's the journalists. It's to take them out because they're the number one spreaders of propaganda and misinformation. And it's come to the part now where, I won't lie to you, more times than not, I've thought about the freedom of the press. Like, is that such a good thing? And it's like, it's the Constitution. We have to have it. But what happens now when the press is owned by a predominantly leftist society? And now the news is manipulated, facts are manipulated, and we're no longer getting the truth. And then Fox does it too. So when you have two sides of the same coin equating to both wrong and evil, people, like I said, they ask me all the time, where do you go to get your news that's unbiased? Like, I have no idea where to go. You have to, like I said, you have to wade through the diarrhea to find the turd.
Yeah, it's like Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson had a quote. He said, if I were to be given a choice between having no government and newspapers, or no newspapers and a government, I would choose no government and newspapers, because the government has the power to pick your pocket, whereas it's a different thing for somebody to write their opinion down on a tweet or a column in a blog than it is to exert force through government. So I think I agree with Thomas Jefferson on that one. But I mean, newspapers have always been meant to mislead in that they have always been mouthpieces of some elite organization. I mean, here's a question for you. Polling, right? Like, how do people feel about like this candidate versus that candidate, or this issue versus that issue? Do normal people conduct polls?
No.
Right? Normal people love to read polls. Like 59% of people say this. Well, who gives a crap? But the point is that like, newspapers use polls as a way not to tell you how people think, but as a way to tell people what to think. Like 59% of people in California think Larry Elder is blackface, blah, blah, blah. So don't you want to be a part of that, right?
Exactly. So it's telling you, it's like slowly misleading you what to think, because you always want to be on the side of the majority. That's how some people are. It's like,
but you can't stop it. You can't stop that because the elite, right or wrong, Thomas Jefferson was an elite. Alexander Hamilton was an elite. Did you know that the paper, the New York Post, was founded by Alexander Hamilton?
I didn't know that, no.
So the New York Post is a fascinating story. So he founded the New York Post explicitly to smear Thomas Jefferson. Yes. Yeah.
Damn, it's like they even had like the schematics of how to like play a political dirtball, if you will, even back then.
And that was the thing. They set up newspapers and organizations to fight for their ideas. It's like I have a blog, and you have a website and a following. You set that platform up to wage the war of ideas. Benjamin Franklin was a printer, and he published newspapers and Farmer's Almanac and things like that to fight for his ideas and what he believed. Alexander Hamilton hated Thomas Jefferson and everything he stood for, and founded a newspaper that, if you read the newspaper today, the New York Post, it still has that same kind of mindset of the more kind of big government Republican type of mindset. Ultimately, if you read the New York Post, you'll pick that up, versus the more kind of like classical liberal views of Thomas Jefferson, which were more laissez-faire, that you're going to get more to like a Reason magazine or, whatever. So it's kind of like, newspapers have always been outlets for the elites. Most, the closest most common people get to newspapers or radios or television is to write an op-ed, right? Or no, they get to write a letter to the editor. Sometimes regular people will write op-eds, but when you read op-eds, for the most part, you're reading ones from elites. You're reading, you're reading the opinions of Steve Forbes and all these other people. So it's kind of like that's always been that way, and it always will be that way. And I don't know that like combating that is the way to go, because I think it's a tool that even people who are on the lower end of the spectrum, like if you differentiate yourself by publishing your opinion weekly in a paper or something like that, you've taken a step towards the elite. Most people don't have time to sit down and write a letter to their newspaper or write columns for their newspaper. And, they sure as hell are not going to sit down and poll the people in their community to get their views, to try and convince people in their community something, right? So it's a complex, multi-layered argument. And I think my voice is almost completely shot now, so I think I'll probably have to end it there, John Burke.
All right. Well, Austin, I want to say thank you for coming on the show today. It is always a pleasure having you on and having these really good discussions. You can find him at AP4 Liberty on Instagram, and you have your morning radio show. Is that just local, or is it also? So
you can tune in anywhere. We do on Facebook, if you use Facebook, the KWOS morning show. So keep watching our state. Keep KWOS. You can type it on Facebook. Come check us out. You'll see the morning show with my picture up on the tab. Otherwise, it's good to like download the app, KWOS app on your iPhone or your Android. That's a great way to listen in. But yeah, like you said, any social media platform, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it's AP4 Liberty, and that's easy enough to find me there. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, brother. Hey, thanks for being here, and best of luck to you on the upcoming wedding and your radio show. It's good to hear you're doing so well, man. I'm glad you're happy.
Hey, man, I'm glad you finally got therapy.
What do you mean by finally? Wow, what a backhanded compliment.
And it's okay to cry. I'll talk to you later, John.
Later, brother. Bye. Oh, my God. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this episode of the All American Savage Show podcast. A big thank you to my guest, Austin Peterson, for coming on and giving us his views on things. Austin's also a very intelligent man. I really enjoy his discussions. He definitely brings a different style of perspective to the conversation. So a big thank you. Again, you can find him at the letters AP4 and then spell out Liberty on Instagram. He loves him some good memes. He loves being sarcastic. People sometimes don't pick up on his humor. But Austin's a very intelligent man. He appeared on the Drunken Debates a few times. He was really good. Really intelligent man. So again, thank you. And again, you can listen to this episode on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. We're also going to be uploading it to Rumble. And if you could do me a favor, head on over to the iTunes app. And then if you look at the podcast, the All American Savage Show podcast, you click go to show and scroll down. Leave us a review. That actually helps us out quite a lot. Again, you get this content for free. So help us out by trying to spread the voice of common fucking sense and the voice of savagery. So a big thank you for everybody. And again, don't forget this episode is brought to you by shellshockcbd.com. Today we are dropping the 500 milligram pet tincture, and it's peanut butter flavored. So what you do with it in regards to how you get your pet to take it is none of my damn business. But yeah, check it out. And today alone, it's going to be 20% off. We have a new SOP that we're doing here at the business that when we release a new product, we're marking it down 20%. And the reasoning for that, I'll be completely honest with you. I want you to try this product at a cheaper price to at least get it in your hand. And then you try it and you see it works. And you come back and say, okay, you know what? It's worth paying the $40 for that. It's worth it. So, and because I know when you're skeptical of a product that you've never taken or used before, you probably aren't going to want to shell out $40 to $60. I get it. It makes sense to me. That's why we have sample packs of the Delta 8. We have sample packs of the Rack Out Gummies for sleep. And that's for you to try it at a cheaper method or a cheaper price point. And if you do like it, well, then, hey, then you'll come back and hopefully you'll be a customer for life. I stand behind our products 100%. And again, I appreciate every single one of you. So again, go to iTunes, leave us a review. And also don't forget, I forgot to announce the winner, which is on the Shell Shock CBD page of the $2,000 giveaway. We're picking another winner very soon. You can submit your application if you're in financial distress and you need $2,000. We're giving away a total of $14,000 over the period of the next 7 weeks. And that's what we're making happen. I sold my charger, and they gave me $14,000 for it. So you know what? Let's bless some people. Let's pay it forward. Y'all have made Shell Shock CBD such a huge success that we're going to do our best to give back to other people in need. So, again, you can go and sign up. The link is in my Twitch stream. You can go on the Shell Shock page as well, and you can sign up. But I appreciate the love. And, guys, I will see y'all tomorrow at 10 a.m. CST. We have a lot of other great guests coming up for you on the show. And thank you for making the show such a huge success. I'm watching the stream and listening numbers, and they are just continuously soaring. A big thank you for making that happen. So, once again, I will see y'all tomorrow at 10 a.m. CST.